Good evening. Take two. I had a little bit of a lighting situation happen there that taught me a lesson not to do again. So, good evening, and I want to introduce the Sprite of Cobra Eggs. So, here she is. So the egg holder is pewter, and the sculpture is solid bronze. She is, let's say, part gecko, bird, somewhat humanoid, and has tendrils as legs. The part of a cobra body is her throne. The egg, the whole bronze piece comes out of the holder, so it's not fixed in there. It's just held in by balance and the structure of the pewter holder. She has bumblebee wings, and her duty is to make sure that reptile eggs, that they match and stay matched, so they hatch belonging to the species that laid the eggs. So she works on a subatomic level to make sure that DNA stays consistent and what it was meant to be. And on the quantum level, I would suspect as well, just so that there are boundaries between chaos and consistency. So we're not talking about a dodo bird situation here where someone or something switches eggs and you have turtles in a rattlesnake egg den and alligators in a lizard den or something like this. Not that alligators aren't lizards, but you know what I mean. So ultimately, she makes sure that the eggs on a more quantum level stay matched to the species that they're developing under. You can see there's a little egg entwined in her tendril legs. She's pregnant and has 2 belly buttons as well. So I'm going to switch back over to the full screen here. Wait for her to come back around. This piece was impossible to center just based on the shape of the sculpture and the size of the frame of the recording and the turntable. I tried to keep it as central as I could, but that was not happening. So here we go. Back to the full presentation screen. Thank you for meeting the Sprite of Cobra Eggs. So per my usual, I'm going to hop up and turn off all this peripheral situation, and I'll be right back. may have taken a little longer than usual, but here I am. So, what I wanted to touch on this evening, and I just want to check something for my peace of mind here. Yes, there I am. That's what happens when you're starting to get older, that you're not always sure whether you're out of focus or the camera is. So, I'm not really sure how I'm going to present this. A lot of what I do with this channel is intuitive, and things just sort of arise. And I usually do this, for whatever reason, really late at night. And so I don't do a lot of pre-prep, like writing notes and having bullet points or cliff notes or teleprompter situation. It's more just talking as if we just met on the street and you asked me a question, and freestyle, and it just comes naturally. So, and I think that in this day and age and going forwards, that's a more honest narrative, a way to promote, not necessarily promote, but present one's thoughts and feelings and perspectives, rather than sitting and maybe thinking too much, planning too much, possibly even developing fear and a bias and trepidation around certain things. It's almost as if, of course, the news does this 24/7, where I would say most mainstream news, if not all, is never presented by the individual themselves. It's more of it's just someone presenting the words that have been created by a think tank, and they give it out to the public, but they're not giving out to the public necessarily their point of view. It's just a point of view, and they act as if they're aligned with it and they agree. And yet the presentation is often, if you read between the lines, listen to the intonation of voice, body language, eye language, it's a game. Ultimately, it's a job. It's not a passion. So just something to keep in mind when you're watching the news, that mainstream media news, that is, not necessarily independent journalists. And mentioning independent journalists, down in the description box, you'll see a list of links to independent journalists, and feel free to explore. Democracy Now! Is a good one. Double Down News, the Electronic Intifada, Al Jazeera, which is somewhat of they would definitely be considered a mainstream media, but they're definitely more aligned with the ethics of journalism and presenting the news with a more personally invested vibe, almost like a National Geographic vibe. So Al Jazeera is quite good in that regards, or that regard. And what I wanted to talk about this evening is Israel, basically, and religion, and how it's used to cloak personal shortcomings and bad habits. Uh, so it's a bit of a touchy situation here because of this whole trope of anti-Semitism going around that basically camouflages bad behavior and bad habits, and even bad habits of ancestral pathologies and psychopathies. Um, and the ego. I want to talk about the ego and the mental illness of warped character development in human beings, and how that warped character development becomes tradition in the minds of masses of people who are connected to a particular religion or belief system. It's almost as if you take it for granted if you become one religion, you adopt the bad habits and bent morals or judgments of that religion, that religion's judgments of another religion or people. So, like, for instance, white Christian nationalists, that has nothing to do with Christianity. So, getting down into the mere or the mire of the swamp, down into the clay layers and the fossils, there's ego invested in religion. And I think it's high time to call it out and to tease it apart. Religion is thoroughly corrupted by the ego, and the ego, of course, is found in the holy books as well. I mean, whenever a divine inspiration comes through a human being, there's going to be someone or even some part of that same human being that may turn around and contradict it and turn it into some kind of cult asset. And yet the tenets are there. If you read those books, not everything that was divinely inspired, that was written down, is corrupted by the ego. And yet, within the story and the larger schema, the ego comes in and starts using these beautiful things to do ugly deeds. And so I feel like as a culture or even just as human beings, it would be good to get into the habit of calling people out for hypocrisy and contradictions, and holding them accountable for those things, to not let them just fly by and see it as something to normalize it. But this has been going on for centuries, millennia, perhaps, in relation to certain religions, where people would call a war a righteous act. I don't believe that war is ever a righteous act. And yet, if you look at the threat is more primordial. It's like the Germans invading Europe and fighting against that. I don't think that there's any reason to piggyback religion onto defending yourself. I think that just muddles things, and you don't need extra reason to push back, just on a basic human level. But people will take advantage of a war to propagandize their itinerary and to advertise what they have to sell. So, and religions will start wars because they know that emotionally their material will trigger people more so than something else. And so there's corruption there too. And on the subject of Israel, the Holocaust has been weaponized as an excuse or as a sort of a deflection device where anyone who criticizes Israel is labeled anti-Semitic, and yet underneath that criticism is a foundation of historical records and accounts of extraordinary atrocities on a human rights level and just simply on a human level that Israel has done in kidnapping, assassinating, torturing, imprisoning, false imprisoning. That's what I mean by imprisoning, false imprisonment, espionage, sabotage, you name it. Israel has done it to the Palestinians and others, the Lebanese as well, and the Egyptians. So, and Americans too. And there's this carte blanche attitude towards Israel that is deeply dysfunctional, where there's this favoritism to make up excuses and look the other way. And that's what I'm critical of. I'm critical of not the Jewish faith, which is as far away from Israel as it could be. Israel, for the most part, has nothing to do with the Jewish faith. Judaism is not alive and well in Israel. I can tell you that much. At least not the positive side of Judaism. I mean, every religion has a shadow side. That's just how magic works, because we have egos. We have a shadow side. So that filter has its day in the sandbox as well. And we are multitudes. And so nothing divine or good stays the same in a human being. There's always going to be hypocrisy and contradictions and ultimately sin, I guess you could call it. That's part of, I think, the pressure that keeps us evolving. We're both the antagonist and protagonist of our own evolution. And religion is simply an idea, a feeling, thoughts, and beliefs and ultimately it's material, and so is a lot of other things. And the psyche is not going to limit its contradictions to not being applied to religion when it's being implied with everything else in and around itself. So religion is not immune to manipulation and corruption. It's a human enterprise. So I wanted just to point out that criticism of cult psychology or cult ideology, the whole psychopathy around cult thinking, and there's a lot of research one has to do to kind of get a basis of what that implies. And I'm not going to go into that tonight, but it is a form of mental illness and corruption of the psyche, of the character of a person, brainwashing, whatever you want to call it. It's abnormal and it's dangerous. And so you can take the example of Israel, which is not even 100 years old, and apply it to the cult of Christians who performed a massive ethnic cleansing campaign on Turtle Island, which is now called the United States of America. And then that same cult of Christianity who kept a slave trade going for 235 plus years on the same soil. So America has no room to think itself, at least historically, better than what's happening in Israel. It had its own Israel times 1,000 when it first started to ethnically cleanse from East Coast to West Coast, and from the Texas border to the Canadian border, and Australia as well, and Canada, of course. So this whole Anglo-Saxon meat grinder with the Christian cross emblazoned upon its metal body, and of course the Inquisition via the Catholics, the Salem witch trials. It's all corruption. It's human mental illness and ego. So the criticism of Israel is not about Judaism whatsoever. It's about human beings and cult programming and the ego, the lies that the persona sells to others, and those others often believe it, and then that just creates more conflict. So I'm just putting it out there tonight that there's extraordinary atrocities going on in Israel by Israel, and that corruption and infestation of psychopathy is embedded in America as well via Israel and throughout the world. There's a whole network of Mossad corruption and influence, and AIPAC corruption and influence. And of course, Christianity has its version of the same thing. The CIA, MI6, they have their shadow ranks embedded in the world as well, all under the banner of Christianity and saving the world by destroying the innocent. I mean, look what happened to Afghanistan. 20 years later, the Taliban just moved right back in. Thank you very much. So it just goes to show you that there's a fallacy here. It's fake. They're not saving anyone. They're simply taking lives, profiting, living a certain lifestyle while doing that, and then utterly failing to achieve their goals, and leaving the Middle East a wasteland of vengeful, traumatized people. And it's not religion. And if it is religion, then I think it's high time to reassess. Do you really need it in your life? If that's what it does, if that's what its ultimate capstone on the pyramid is about, at least on a societal level. I'm not talking about on an individual level. Maybe religion is only meant to be kept indoors in the privacy of one's own home, and not meant to be for more than one person in the sense of its practice. It's very possible that when more than one person gathers with religion in mind, counterintuitive things start to happen. Things that are not natural to the nature of religion's devices and tools. So something to think about, that it may be a numbers problem, that you've got to wonder, what would religion be if it were not permitted to create churches and mosques and holy places where more than one person gathers? So I mean, things happen when more than one person gathers. Few hundred people, and then suddenly someone proclaims themselves the leader, and then everyone else falls in line. Well, that right there is already, you've already removed yourself from the main mission of religion, and that is to effect the autonomy of a sentient being solo, to leave you to your own devices and feelings and judgments and morals and ethics and principles. It's a very existential exercise, religion. And it's not very existential when you give your will over to someone else's will, and suddenly you're being told what to believe and how to interpret certain things. And before you know it, you're a cult member. You're a follower. You're not a leader. And in my opinion, not that I'm a religious person, but in my opinion of looking at the theology and the psychology of religion, religion is for the individual. It's an existential exercise. It's a tool for one person. It starts with one person. And perhaps that's what it's meant for, just one person. at a time. So capitalizing on religion destroys it. And yet, since it cannot, in of itself, it can't defend itself. It's not like you have angels coming down and wiping out whole city blocks because someone did something in the name of religion that isn't religion. There's no blowback in that regard. Religion is not a sentient being that has any kind of feedback or delivers consequences when there's hypocrisy. But the hypocrisy gets baked into the doctrines of the religion, and before you know it, you have a bastardized version of something, and you think it's original. It's for instance, Orthodox Judaism. You would think that those guys have been around, and gals, I guess, in some regards, have been around since the beginning, but they're only like 200 years old. Orthodox Judaism was born in Europe, not even in Palestine, ancient Middle East. So there's a lot of research to do to get a footing on what Judaism is. And then once you have a sense of what it is at its core without the personal ahistorical narrative that Israel is writing into the history books, you have to do some scholarship and get a basis of what's what, and then see the hypocrisy and the behavior of the individuals carrying that banner. And ultimately, both the evangelical movement in America and the Zionist movement in America, there's Christian Zionists and there's, Judaic Zionists. And yet those phrases contradict each other entirely. They're both religion on mental illness. So Zionism is a non-secular, nationalistic, ethnically based, racist theology, and it's just chock full of ego and persecution and navel gazing, huge mountainous volumes of vanity and compensationary behavior. There's a lot to be said about that, but I'm going to keep it short for this presentation, just to stay on point with the fact that bad behavior and crimes and torturous behavior towards innocents, children, mothers, fathers, whole families, journalists, ambulance drivers, aid workers. Israel is massacring them all. And the citizens of Israel are all for it. 70+% are fine with leveling Gaza down to 2 feet tall. So you have to ask yourself, is it really about this or that religion? No, it isn't. It's about human beings and bad habits and mental health and how they think about themselves. This inflated, egoic, compensationary point of view that somehow they have. Christians have it too, especially Christians in America, who say, well, you're not American. Well, Americans aren't Americans. There's no such thing as an indigenous American. And you can't call the Indians of Turtle Island American Indians. There is no such thing as an American Indian. That's just more soft psyops and propaganda to keep people in line, as if America has always been America. It hasn't. And America is a land of mutts, and I'm a mutt. I have Scottish, Irish, English, Scandinavian. You know, I'm not in Scandinavia. I'm not in Ireland or Scotland or England. I'm in California. Native territory. This land did not form my ancestral DNA, if you want to talk science. There is no American, unless you're native to this soil, can claim to be a native on this continent. It's all in your head. It's a script. And now, if you've got Scottish and you go to Scotland and you claim that this is my land, then okay, you're good to go, because it is. You've got the genetic blood right to say whatever you want to say and claim whatever you want to claim, within reason, of course. But if you go there and you say that, your genetic map is predisposed to be okay with that, and no one can take that away from you. If that's part of your egoic identity, if you want to claim your body as proof of your identity, then be my guest. Time will prove otherwise, but for now, enjoy yourself. So it's just a reality check. I'm putting this out there that anti-Semitism is just a deflection tool at this point. A long time ago, before October 7th, it might have had a different relevancy. It just depends on case-by-case situation, because I still feel like the weaponization of the Holocaust is an old trope. It's an old device for groups of people, individuals, to do bad things, corrupted things, in the name of, in order to get a free pass, while others would be put in prison for the same deed. So there's something going on there that is not true and right and good. If a good favor cannot be given to a bad deed, that is not the way things work down here. And although that does happen, it doesn't work. There's always blowback. Nature is always looking. There are certain fundamental laws that just cannot be manipulated by the ego. So if you give a good favor to a bad person or a bad deed, it always ends in not a good situation. It has a timeline, and it has a cumulative effect. And hypocrisy eventually comes back around. And now we have it coming back around from October 8th to this very moment that I'm speaking to you. It's gathering momentum, and the avalanche is occurring. Um, so I think that's it. I think that's pretty much it. Um, don't let egoic identity, paranoia of people, like people have their egos rolled up into being ambassadors of this and that imaginary, magical thinking kingdom of this or that. But when you dig into the books in the actual literature, most people who claim Judaism or Islam or Christianity know very little about the actual faith itself. And when you do claim a faith as part of your identity and you use it as a defense to do bad things in the name of, that alone is hypocrisy and anti-religion. So people are contradicting themselves 24/7, and yet that's often a way of life. That's a peculiar way of life, but there you have it. Welcome to being a human. And that's not justifying that, because there are other ways of being. But this material is the lead of the alchemist's gold. It's not meant to be painted gold and sold as gold. It's lead. And we have to call it for what it is. Bad people cloaked in the goodness of religion, that does not make that religion good when it's being used in that way. It's a mirage. And so don't get it twisted that if you're critical of Israel, somehow you're defiling the memory of the Holocaust or something, or a Holocaust, I should say, because there is no the Holocaust, although Hollywood has made it out to be that. We have to remember that these events have gone on in the world for a very long time. And the Holocaust that it took to develop Turtle Island into the United States is 1,000-fold larger than other Holocausts that are considered the Holocaust. So just keep it real. The ego inflation of weaponizing a Holocaust is not to be underestimated. That somehow, some way, the ego, the mass ego of Israel has been inflated by this victimhood, this identity of victimhood that for their generations doesn't even belong to most of the people who take on that victimhood. There are Holocaust survivors still alive, but ultimately the vast majority of people who take on that identity didn't even experience it, weren't even around. So it's just a wild free for all of hypocrisy, atrocious crimes, and all under this banner that is ultimately fake. It's just a construct of bad behavior, criminal mindsets, psychopathy, sociopathy, and in some regards, just pure evil, being mediumshipped through groups of human beings doing unspeakable acts of terror and death. So don't be lazy. If you feel something in your moral core, stand on it. Let it stand on you. Feel it. Do something about it. Speak on it, or at least speak to yourself in an honest way about it. Well, on that note, welcome to Monday, and thank you for supporting the channel. Like and subscribe. Feel free to reach out, comment, and all the best to you going forwards and backwards and standing still, especially standing still.